And we are live. Greetings and salutations, all you lovers of lit RPG, and those of you who are. Oh, hello, John Doe. Interrupted my entire spiel. It's fine. Welcome to my takeover here on this wonderful Monday afternoon. Um, thank you, John. I am very happy to be here as well. It is always lovely to be a part of this wonderful community and to take part in these wonderful, wonderful panels. And shout out to War God and Dan's Inferno. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for the love. But yeah, so welcome to my takeover, where I will answer random questions. We can talk random bullspit. Thank you, Kyle. That's really nice. That's really kind. This is why I like doing these panels. Everybody has been very kind and considerate and just the most wonderful of people with only the nicest things to say. Though I expect Brian Norton to swing by here and say something maybe not as nice. I hope he does. Yes, there it is. Thank you. I will do what I can, Brian. But yeah, hello. Oh, that jawline. I've been working to try and fix it. You know, doing my best with what I can. But yeah, so all the kindness, all the consideration. But yeah, so if anybody has any questions, feel free to shoot out the questions. I figure for this first bit, while we wait for those to come in, I'll talk a little bit about myself and how I got into this. So, for those of you who don't know, can you tell us about how you picked the voice for it? Yes, I can get into that, John. Yes. So, I'll do my spiel, and you will be the very first question I answer. So, a little bit about me. I started working in audiobooks and voiceover and lit RPG around 2019, 2020. Actually, just over 5 years ago now, I started working in voiceover. I came from a theater background, and where was I going with that? Yes, came from a theater background, and then COVID hit, and that was not great if you wanted to work in the theater. Thankfully, I'd started working part-time, hi Tim, in voiceover and turned that into a full-time career. And now I have been doing it ever since, mostly working in lit RPG fantasy. I love it so much. I'm a big gamer myself. I'm going to play Dragon Age Inquisition when I'm done with the panels today. So big fantasy guy with the stats and the roleplay. And that includes making fun voices for things. And so, for that first question from John, how I picked the voices for things. Thank you, John. Yes. So, the way that I go about picking my voices, it's threefold. I kind of talked about it a little bit earlier in the week. But first I go through the character Bible, if an author deigns to send me one, which is usually a short bit of description talking about how each character... Hello. Yes, please wake up. It is time to wake up for the day. But I usually go through the character Bible and find any sort of descriptors or anything like that that they want me to know right off the bat, like they're serious or they sound like they're Irish, stuff like that. And then I will go through the script and find any adjectives that are in line with the character, anything that is in the text that describes how they sound, how they look, things like that. Any nouns I find very interesting around them. Any verbs, like if it says that they spat their words or they're biting their words or things like that, or they roar and it's like appears multiple times, I will use that to impact my performance for them. And then the third bit after that is usually what they do in the text, things like that, like in the dialogue, the way that the dialogue is written. If it's especially long, if it's especially flowery, then maybe there'll be a bit more, what's the word? Professorial, like very teachery, like it's a lecture. Or if their sentences are very clipped, very short, very quick, then that might impact how they speak. So that, I hope, answered your question. And I usually go with that. Sometimes the voices are like that. Sometimes they take a little bit more time to figure out. Josh asked, what is my preferred manuscript submission? I'm going to assume you mean like style of file, or maybe, I'm not sure if you mean like how I get it to like for formatting from a technical standpoint, or where in the process they are. But I'll answer for both of that. I prefer PDFs that are about to be published. I want it to be as close to the published manuscript as possible, and I want it in PDF form style. Preferably like PDF, just and as close to being done as possible. I want it to be like the book itself, formatting like the book, like how I would read it normally. I want to read it like it's supposed to be read, because I even feel that the formatting, if it's meant to be a book, I want to read it like it's meant to be a book. I want to read it exactly how a reader would read it, so that there is no difference in their expectation, maybe. Like, I perform it exactly how they're reading it, or if they would read it. And always in PDF, because Docs hates me, and I hate Docs, because I'm not paying for a subscription. So, I hope that helped. All right. Yes. Hello, Tim. Really have to yell? My favorite Quest Academy author? Oh, tough call. Tough call. I would have to say he's this Irish guy. He's all right. He's known to be generous in some circles. A man full of pith and vinegar, as it were. He's quite a clever man. Brian Norden is my favorite Quest Academy writer. He's the only Quest Academy writer, but it's fine. Question. This is a very serious. If you could inflict Brian Norden with a voice of your making for a week, what would it be? An English accent. Take that, you Irishman. No. I wouldn't deign that I wouldn't punish him with that at all. I can't mimic him. No. I'm contractually obligated to only say nice things about him. But but no, I would want him to sound like a New York American for a week, just to see what it's like, just to get the vibes. Because apparently I made Salvatore, his father Pietro in Quest Academy, sound like a mob boss. So I want Brian to sound like a mob boss. Oh, I can't. I really can't. It's just Irish. It just blurs down into Irish. This is not an impression, Brian. This is just me doing an Irish accent. Would absolutely take Pietro's voice in a fucking heartbeat. That's fair. And this one's from Brian. Have you ever, in your life, been given the stage or vocal direction to be more dramatic? You know what? No, I haven't. Jokingly, people do know me for being theatrical, but I've always been a very boisterous person. I come from a very boisterous, animated family. We're very... You know how there are some families they're like elves, and some families are like dwarves. Mine is a family of dwarves. But I've come from a very big dramatic family, and I went to a performing arts high school when I was growing up, and I studied theater, and I just have always had theatricality be a big part of myself. And my idols for acting are people like Gary Oldman and Tim Curry. These people who fully commit to every bit and who are every bit as entertaining in one role as they are in another. Like, if a movie's got 1 star, they're the reason it at least got that 1 star. So I made a promise to myself to never, ever be less than as big as I can be, or as appropriate as the role demands. I can be subtle, it's just not as fun. But I also am of the mindset that it is so much easier to bring back a performance from a director's standpoint. Like, they can make something a little less strong than it is to make something stronger. It is way too hard. Matthew fucking Berry. I love Matt Berry so much. One of my characters in Revenant's Revenge, that series that I just did with Podium, written by Andrew Kervick. In book 3, there's a wizard in there who at first I'm like, this guy is giving me kind of Matt Berry vibes. So I decided that, you know what? He's Matt Berry for the entire time he's in the book, and he's in the book a lot. So it's very, very, very fun to have that voice in my back pocket, and he is my new favorite. I think he took the Tim Curry crown. But yeah, I always try to be bigger than not. It's more interesting to me. And if it's appropriate, like, I don't want to just be big for the sake of being big. Yes, I would love that. that would make me so happy, it would be fantastic. And yes, Matt Berry is fantastic in everything he does. I like Toast of the Town. That's my bit. If we put in stage directions, will you move around in the booth? Yes, I do actually. Sometimes I do. So there are moments in my booth where I found that adding, gesture, adding different sort of movement to a part that to help me convey what I'm trying to talk about, it does color the words. So I do move in the booth. I try to keep it quiet, and I've ruined good takes because I've accidentally clipped the mic. I'm not like going nutso, but I do like to talk with my hands. So I find that using gesticulation does help to enhance performance if it's called for. So, yeah. How else would someone send you a book if it was not written like the book? You'd be surprised. Sometimes I've gotten some like unedited, unfiltered manuscript. I've gotten unspaced out manuscript. I've gotten tiny bullet point font, like they wrote it on like a notepad app, and I'm just like, I can't read this. This is just too smushed. So yeah, so surprising. Let's see if there's any that I missed. New comment. Do you have the space to walk about in your booth? Not really. So my booth is my closet. I converted our closet, my wife and I's closet, into a booth because when we moved in, I live in New York, and the description of New York being in a fucking shoebox, as it were. But we actually have a very nice apartment. One sentence manuscript. Do not even put that into the world. I've had some that I'm like, where are your periods? My God. But I have a walk-in closet. That is to say, I can like walk in, turn around, do all that stuff. And there is a perfect little nook for my microphone. And so that is where the microphone sits. So I do have a little bit of room around me to move my hands and stuff because it's the closeting space. So the microphone doesn't actually take up any extra room. So it almost looks like it was designed to have a microphone in that closet. It's weird, but it worked out perfectly for me. And we've been here ever since, and I've been using that ever since. What's been the most interesting stat system you've performed so far? Good question. I think what eventually became the most interesting was one that I did for a series by Sean Oswald, the Class Shift series. And there's a system in that was originally, I did not anticipate the system being the voice of the god that brought the main character there, who's this god of like trickster chaos and everything like that. Good old Cal Dakota. I love that character so much. But I morphed the system voice to be his voice, which is kind of like a game show host, sort of styling, guess what, he just won kind of stat screen. And I decided to go with that because it just became so fun. It was a happy accident that it's like, oh, he's talking and he's got such a unique class that I don't know. It makes sense that he gets all of his stats read to him by the god of mischief, basically. So I eventually morphed it into carrying that voice into the system. And occasionally other gods, when they would send their specific messages, would have their same voice too, to sort of like make it seem like the system had the voice of whatever god was sending the message. But the overall voice was the god who brought him there. And yeah, that was just a pure happy accident. That was just neat. So thank you for that good question. What truly intrigues you about a book that makes you want to be the voice actor for that book? Do you prefer nonfiction, fantasy, all that jazz? Okay. I assume the SVI is sci-fi. But I prefer fantasy. And I prefer fantasy mostly because as a kid, I always grew up loving legends, myth. I read a lot of different fantasy series. Aragon was my personal poison of choice, as it were. But I love the idea of magic, and I love the inherent optimism that the fantasy genre brings. And I love the inherent sense of nostalgia that fantasy has as a genre. Sci-fi usually looks, it's always looking to the future. It can be dark, but it can be optimistic. But fantasy, there's just this wonderful once upon a time energy that I just love about fantasy. I love the idea that this story could be something that is thousands of years old, that it's like built into our bones. Like that's why I love also Lord of the Rings. That's based on real myth from the human world. Like it's Tolkien's idea of, oh, this is like Earth, but so far in the past that we've lost all this history. And I love that. I love that inherent history that the fantasy genre contains. So that is my preferred genre. But when it comes to what kind of books I do, I'm very free. My whole thing is that if it was written from a place of heart and written from a place of passion, that's all I ask for, because it will then be inherently good. There have been some books that I've read that may grammatically have been all over the place, like desperately needed an editor. Maybe the plots are not the most new or the most, oh my gosh, the twists, the turns. But if it's written from a place of passion, that bleeds through. You can really tell that. You can really tell. And that's why I really love Lit RPG. Practically every book I've worked in on the genre has been from a place of passion. You can tell people really like writing, and they really like writing this style, and they really like writing for people who really enjoy reading the style. So that's what my main criteria is. If you're writing this and it's just I'm just trying to make money, I'm trying to branch out and do this, but I'm like, if it's not from here, that's not for me. It's got to be from here. So that's me. We need to know how best to bribe you. Bourbon's a good start. Of course, this is rye, so I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But honestly, I like to be bribed in compliments. I like to be bribed like any actor. Buy me a drink. Buy me, like if you see me at a con or see me at a bar, buy me a drink. Be like, hey, I loved this book. And then just ask me a question about it. Like if you really like the work and you're dying to ask me something, I'm an open book. But I just love to talk to people about why they love what they love. So that's it. That's my bribe. And if we can do it over whiskey, all the better. What would be the coolest voice-based power? Voice-based power. I will say, thank you, Brian. Voice-based powers honestly automatically make me think of Skyrim, which is one of my favorite games. That is a good. Basil Hayden's great. I love them. I got a bottle of that from a friend of mine for Christmas 2 years ago, and it was so good. Oh, I loved it. It was like in port barrels. Outstanding. And no, I don't like brandy. I think it tastes like perfume. That and cognac. Yeah, don't. I cannot do brandy, cognac, or Canadian whiskey. Sadly, it tastes unfinished to me. I'm like, prohibition's over. We can make good whiskey again. It's okay. But pretty much everything else I'm good with. I'd love to try. But voice-based power, maybe. Maybe I'll try Brandy Slush. But voice-based power, I think of Skyrim, which is one of my favorite games. And I would love to have a book where there is, like, they use power shouts. Because, one, from a performance standpoint, that'd be very interesting to just, the intensity is automatically, raised when you're shouting. When you're in a battle scene. That kind of energy. That sort of live wire energy is so high when you start shouting that to keep that up in a book where it's like that's how they fight, I would love that. And from a technical standpoint, it'd be really fun to see how I can get away with shouting constantly in a book where people don't like shouting because it technically peaks the audio files. I've gotten quite a few reviews early when I first started out that it's like, I like him, but he's shouting all the time. It's just too much. And I agree. I shouted without technique. Now I know how to shout properly in a book so that it's not destroying the file and still keeping the integrity of the. It is Dan the Man. I'd like to think now after 5 years, people know what they expect, and that's perfectly fine with me. I have my own style. I've got my own. What you see is what you get kind of thing for books. Like if you want something that'll lull you to sleep, do not listen to me. If you want something that will keep you awake for like 8 hours, there we go. Now we can talk. But yeah, I would love like a Skyrim style shouts or power kind of book. That'd be a lot of fun. Oh, this so separately, yeah. Talking about Dragon Age, the Veilguard there, the reviews are out. I'm not gonna buy it until January. I'm gonna give it a couple months. I will probably buy it just because I'm curious. And I just love fantasy, but I want to see how different it is because I think Inquisition personally, I know this is a if you're a Dragon Age fan, people are like, no, it's not. It lost so much from Origins. I think it's better. I think Inquisition's better than Origins from a gameplay perspective and from a plot perspective. I do. I think Origins is great, but I think for accessible fantasy, Inquisition's amazing because it drops you into the middle of the story and gives you just enough lore so that you're not confused, but you can find out more and more and more as the game goes on. And I love that. Like it's diegetic lore. I don't have to go pull a fucking Dark Souls and have to look on a wiki to see what the backstory behind a ring was, and that explains the first third of the plot. Like I like that I can find it in game in books, talking to characters, and start piecing things together because I knew nothing about Dragon Age till I played it, and then I went backwards. So I also like fully voiced main characters. I don't like text being written out and having to imagine the voice in this day and age because I also think the Inquisitor voice actors are good. So I think that is excellent. And yes, sci-fi. I do like sci-fi. I love a lot of sci-fi. I've half of my career is sci-fi. To say you don't want to say that's okay, Kyle. I love sci-fi. I have been blessed to have worked with two of the kindest people in regards to sending me work. Well, actually, more than two. But when I was first starting out, and one of them was Chris Kennedy with sci-fi and his whole Four Horsemen universe, and I still work with him to this day. I'm going to keep working with him for at least as long as he keeps sending me books. And it's just one of those really underrated sci-fi universes that I think people need to read more about. And I'm just a big old nerd for everything that's not reality. Josh, please do your best 1940s radio announcer voice. The Empire State Building has grown arms and a mouth with teeth. We'll be right back after this message. Yeah, I love the 1940s voices. I've been told it's very much my style, which I feel that. But when I was a kid, I used to go to baseball games with my buddy Tom, and we would sit up in the grandstands at the Phillies game, and we would just comment like 1940s baseball announcers, and it was so much fun. And our sponsor was always Peanut Chews. They're delicious. And it was such a fun time. So that was actually where I started working on funny voices with him. He's a good dude. He just got married recently, and it was a very fun wedding. How do I feel about going back to an old booking and picking it up for the next book in the series after all those years since you have leveled up your skills so much? So, good example. Rose Reynolds' book series, First Fist. So there was about a year and a half, I want to say, between books 1 and book 2. And I got significantly better between those times. The first book, I went back and listened to it, and I'm like, holy hell, why am I talking so slow? It was, every sentence was so dramatic and weighed with such hefty prose. I hated it. I can't listen to it. There are some books I just can't listen to it because I'm like, wow, there was a phase where I went from conversational when I started to big and shouty to very slow molasses to hi, Steve. Thank you. Yes, I 23 skadooed right out of the grand old 1930s. But hi, Don. But yeah, I can't listen to some books and go back. I adapt. I keep the voices, like the character voices. I keep them as consistent as I can. I keep the pronunciations, but the style is whatever I am doing at the time, which is usually better than what I did before, because I'm always trying to improve and I'm always trying to better myself. I will never be perfect, but I can always strive to be as good as I can be at the moment. And right now, I think my style is okay. So I will narrate any books that are stuck in the past. If they get a sequel, I will narrate them like I do now. Would I ever approve of a remake of the Aragon movie? So many ellipses and gravitas. Very Shatner-esque. I would actually approve of an Aragon miniseries. I think it needs it, like a TV series. I think Aragon gets a bad rap because people critiquing saying, oh, it's written like it was written by a high schooler. It was written by a high schooler. So Oh, it's like Star Wars. Oh, it's like Lord of the Rings. Yeah, two of the biggest fantasy projects of the last 50 years. Oh, yes, God forbid this high schooler write something in a similar vein. Like, I love Aragon. I do, and I would love to see it get some new love and some new life in this day and age with so many fantasy projects going around. Oh, and another one. Oh, it's Aragon. It's just one letter off from dragon because it's a D instead of an E. Yeah, well, Tolkien wrote a tree with a beard named Treebeard. So what do you expect? Let's see. Who next? News? Yes, Kyle, I'll see you next year at the bar. Yes, fuck the haters. Aragon's great. Is there stuff you have to stay away from because it affects your voice? Yes. I have made this my 9 to 5, like 5 days a week job. And I have a very strict schedule with my voice. I came from musical theater specifically, so I already knew how to take care of the voice series. Yeah, the movie sucked. It's a shame. But I hope a series would be better. Yes, he was. But when it comes to the health of the voice, I have a very strict regimen. I need to steam and warm up and have my voice like ready to go half an hour before I even jump in the booth. I can't have lunch until a certain point during the day, and I cannot get back in the booth after lunch until at least maybe like an hour and a half, and then I got to steam again and record again. So like I try to avoid any foods really, but the only foods that are safe where I can keep recording, if I could just like snack on them, are stuff like crackers, peanut butter, Granny Smith apples. That's pretty much like my safe booth food. That if I knew I have to pull out like a 7-8 hour day, because I do sometimes have 7-8 hour days, I will record from 10 to 6. And by the fact that nobody's complained or been able to tell, I guess that sounds okay. But if I have days like that, I will only snack on very, very light things, very easy things. And yeah. Oh, I got 5 minutes, 2 minutes ago. So we've got 3 minutes left. Sorry about that. Why is Clovis the greatest character ever voiced? Because he's so random and silly. I love that. So I had to audition for that one. I had Harmon reach out and was like, I want you for this, but I want to see how you do this character. And so I auditioned and I'm just like, he just sounds so sad. It feels like this might get annoying, but that's kind of the point. Like, it's like that kind of character. And then as the series evolved, it's just like, live by the book, die by the book. All right, so I'm going to focus on the starred comments because I only have like 2 minutes. How do I do that? Steam and a lot of water. How would you like to do duet narration? Oh, okay. Well, actually, John, if it's okay, I'm speaking on a panel at 4 with a bunch of other great narrators, specifically talking about duet and dual narration. So if you want to type that question again and type it in there, it's at 4 o'clock. I will happily answer it then, if that's okay. Thank you so much. Does your wife help when creating female voices? No, but my wife has helped me with editing. She has helped me when I have been overswamped with editing, and she's gotten a lot better at it than I have. She's really quick on the draw. She's also read some of the harem stuff I did before when I was first starting out, and she's like, it's really not that bad. Imagine you're voicing the protagonist of a game. Skyrim, Dragon Age, Baldur's Gate. Somebody, one of you out there, please, that is what I want to do. I want to be a sword and board adventurer, just shouting awesome fantasy words and fighting dragons. That would be great. Do I prefer duet or solo narration if I have a choice? It depends on my schedule. Duet is always fun. Solo, I can get them out quicker. And it also depends on the length. If it's going up into like 20 hours, duet is nice because then I can get like little pauses when I'm doing double clicks to punch in the lines so I can like breathe a little easier. So it all depends. Have I ever had books that I've turned down and why? Yes, once. I quit a series in the middle of doing it. And that was when I first started my career. That was Monster Girl Island. It got too grody for me. And it, started, I only have 2 or 3 big rules that I can't have broken. It broke one of them when it comes to material. And so I just said, fuck this shit, I'm out. So there we go. Have I ever injured my voice? No, but I've gotten really close. I did last year, this time of year, Beauty and the Beast at the Walnut Street Theater in Philadelphia. And I was recording at the same time as I was doing that show. And my voice got so tired that I lost my voice for 3 days because I was trying to do too much, go too hard. So I haven't injured it permanently, but I have thrown it out and it has gotten tired just because I love to do too many things. And final one, any author that you haven't worked with but would be thrilled to work with in the lit RPG genre. Oh, damn. I mean, Matt Dinneman, always. Daddy Dinneman. Honestly, it's a hard question to answer because there was always so many emerging authors and like anybody could be coming in. But I would love to work with anybody and everybody. I love working with everybody because I think everybody's amazing. I do. It's one of those genres that I truly love everybody. I am on Discord, but I don't know my Discord info. But this has been wonderful and lovely. Thank you all so much for joining in. You can follow me on Instagram at Dan the Voice Man down in the corner there, or you can go to my website at www.danielwisniewskiactor.com. You can see all of my different job things, all the theatrical and voice-related things that I do. And I'm also speaking, like I said earlier, on a panel in about 15 minutes discussing duet and dual narration with some wonderful other narrators, including Gary Furlong and Tess Irondale, among others. So please swing by there, and thank you for swinging by here, and have a lovely day.